Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, hi, this is Attican and welcome to another Railway Empire video. This is volume 2 of our new series of sharing community contributions. So I've gone back through some of the great comments you guys have sent in and kind of sifted through that and picked out some things I want to talk about in volume 2, and there's a lot to cover, so let's just jump right on it. The first one I want to cover is one that I cannot believe I cannot believe I failed to put this in volume 1. I'm amazed. This is one of the oldest tips, if you will, from our community. It came from Jan Jansen way back when we first started putting out Railway Empire videos. And it covers a situation like this. Let's say that we had a line running wheat into Grand Rapids, like so. And we wanted to join up and put a log line running into Grand Rapids, like so, hook into that line, and then join in with the fun. Well, we would set it up like so, and we would set our signals. If I could push the right button, there we go. And we would do Control Shift, and it would give us the nice one down here to say go down there and wait. And we'd do Control Shift the other way and it'd say go up here to the station and wait. But you'll notice we got this big long line here. Well, what if we wanted to run a bunch of trains? Now, right now, I was modifying this line, so I've actually got 2 trains already running on this line. Let's put a third one. So I've got 3 trains set up to run on this line going into Grand Rapids for logs. Well, the problem with this right now is that one could be in the station, one could be up here, but that other one is going to be way back here waiting potentially for its turn to go if there's any delay or if we kind of catch up with the supply in Grand Rapids. So Jan Jansen, and it could be Jan Jansen for all I know, but Jan Jansen is the hillbilly way to say it, so that's what we're going to stick with. So Jan Jansen said, you know, these trains when they come back to the station are running empty. In this game, they don't come back with empty cars. They come back literally like this. Let me show you one. Here, right here. This train right here is coming back. You'll notice it's just the engine. There's no cars. So it's very, very short. So what Jan pointed out is you can take your signals. Now I'm holding down the shift key. It's automatically getting my direction. And boop, boop. I can build these nice little short intervals, short blocks, for these returning trains to come into, and that way we get them off the line here, our wheat line, and we don't run the risk of our log trains holding up our wheat trains. So that's a beautiful technique. You can use this anytime you've got a short runway for any kind of rural station coming in to a trunk line. Just go ahead and set up our little Jan Jansen close together signals and watch what happens. Watch what happens to that train now. See, he's going to go, well, he'll go up to here, which he would have anyway, but if that third train was also coming back, it would queue up right here rather than way back here blocking our line. So that's number 1 I want to cover, the Jan Jansen technique for getting our freight trains out of the way. So the second thing I want to cover is another one that came from Ken Suizo. And this one was actually a question he asked. And he asked me basically if the fulfillment rate and the growth rate of a city were equal. In other words, here in Grand Rapids, you can see it's growing at 78%. Now, if it was growing at 61%, would it be growing more slowly? If it was growing at 99% fulfillment, would it be growing more slowly? I kind of thought, yeah, I've always assumed that, yes, if you bump that rate up, you're going to get faster growth. Now, Gravity Cats Gaming came back and said he thought it was just, it's like an on-off switch. You're either growing or you're not growing. So I decided to run a test to figure that out once and for all. And I learned something. So I set up a test, and this is basically what my test looked like. I've got a city-to-city line between Toledo and Grand Rapids so that Grand Rapids can get meat. Now, Grand Rapids is our kind of test subject on this, if you will. I've run wheat into Grand Rapids and logs into Grand Rapids, and I've made sure that we've got cattle going to Toledo and cotton going to Toledo, so that Toledo's two industries, meat and weaving, can both stay supplied, so that if the time comes that well, of course they're going to take meat up to Grand Rapids, and as Grand Rapids grows, they'll start taking cloth. So I wanted to make sure that that stayed supplied and ready to go. And then, but I intentionally did not put corn in there or sugar, which are two others that are needed pretty early. Corn's needed right away. So you can see this growth rate. It's 74. I think it was 78 just a second ago when we looked at it. So it runs up and down around in the 70s all the time and just grows at a nice steady rate. And what I did was I got this set up on February 4th of 1830. That's when I got it all ready to go. And then I ran, I just let it run as is, getting wheat logs, meat, eventually cloth, and of course beer that it produces itself. It kept that growth rate in the 70s, and then I just let it run until it hit 40,000. And it hit 40,000 on July 4th, 1830. So from February 4th, when I kind of started the test, and it was actually growing prior to that, it was around the high 28,000s, close to 29,000. And then I just tested to see how long would it take to get to 40, and July 24th, 1830 was the answer. So then I immediately reloaded this, as you see it here, back to February 4th, and immediately ran a corn line in there and sugar, so that as soon as it was big enough to take sugar, it would take sugar, and ran the test again. Now the fulfillment rate went up into the 80s and even into the 90s as soon as we got all that going, the corn and the sugar. And of course the fulfillment rate here, the way this is set up, it actually diminishes slightly because it gets to the point where it needs the corn, the sugar it's not getting, and it's already not getting corn that it needs. So basically you got a growth rate of 70s, low to mid 70s here in this test, and then when you rerun it and give it corn and sugar, it builds up to a growth rate in the 90s. And guess what date it hit, how fast it grew? It hit 40,000 on July 24th, 1830, the exact same day, which speaks volumes. It basically says that Gravity Cats Gaming got it right, that the city growth is sort of an on-off switch. If you're 61% or higher, in other words, if you're over 60%, you get growth. If you're under, you don't get growth. And that growth appears to be a very steady rate. Now, we can influence this with promoters and what have you. Well, actually, with promoters, that's the other way we can influence it. But leaving those out of the picture, your basic city growth is based on, are you over 60%, period. Now, what does that mean for how we play the games? That wouldn't change anything in my thinking, because I would still want to keep that as high as I can get it, because that's kind of free money if you're supplying more stuff in there. Plus, you don't run the risk of having your growth rate fall below 60 and lose that city growth. And I'm a city growth player. Most of my strategy, most of my thinking is around growing cities. So, but at any rate, I definitely learned something there. Now, it could imply that you would be better off if you had, like, say we had Indianapolis playing in our little party here, and Toledo as well. And we said, okay, we've got Grand Rapids growing now. Let's not worry about them so much. Let's make sure we get whatever we need to get into Indianapolis to let them grow. And then we could go back and double check and make sure we're going. So it does change your thinking, in the fact that now you can kind of spread your attention around a little bit to other cities to help them grow and get them over the hump. But basically what it says, again, on-off switch, over 60 you're growing, under 60 you're not growing. All right, this next one was kind of prompted by a comment from Troy Parsons. Now, Troy's obviously a very good player, and he commented that he does not use warehouses at all, and that he's run tests to show that building warehouses in the early game actually slows down your build. I completely agree with that, and I know some of you kind of think of me as the warehouse guy, because I built a whole series on warehouses and how to use them, and then we've got these strategies that have, like down here, the two-city cluster with a pass-through warehouse. Obviously, I love warehouses. We've got the Johnny Hughes three-city cluster with a single warehouse. I do like warehouses, but I totally agree with Troy that you do not want to use them early in your game, because the cost of setting up the warehouse, setting up the lines to run trains into the warehouse, and then if we look at this train, notice that it's a negative cash flow. This train actually just costs us money. Now watch, it's actually going into the station, into the warehouse to unload. And let's just watch it unload. I'll speed it up a little bit. Boom, 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 boom. No money popped up. Why is that? Well, when you load into a warehouse like this, you don't get paid directly to the train for the train showing up. Where we do, however, this is one thing I would correct in what Troy wrote to me. You do get paid for that freight, but you get paid for that freight as it's consumed by the city. So when Manchester consumes milk, we will make extra money based on the freight that we've moved in here. So we will get paid for it, but the rate of return is slower, has to be consumed, and to get other money for it, we have to set up other lines going to the other cities in order to move that milk over to Liverpool or to Leeds or someplace else that needs it. So in the early game, what you want to do, in fact, let me just load up the rapid start, and I'll show you what we really want to do in the early game. Okay, so you may recognize this as the quick guide we just did for rapid expansion strategy. Well, in the rapid expansion strategy, which is one of the strongest things I've been able to come up with to get you off to a good start and build a really strong economy, if you want to go out and count how many warehouses we have in the rapid expansion strategy, the answer is 0. And why is that? Because we want to get fast revenue, trains making money right away. And the way we do that are beer meat lines, or in this case, ham cider lines, that are doing city-to-city automatic so that they can run ham and cider, and they can also pick up some passengers and mail and have full trains. And then we're directly feeding, directly into the city, the goods like pigs into the ham and apples into the cider, pigs into the ham, apples into the cider, so that we make money and we have profitable lines everywhere. So we make profit on our direct lines and get immediately paid when they show up into the station. Now, if we did the warehouse, of course, we would have to set up the warehouse. We would have to run trains, all these different things into the warehouse, and then we would have to run the trains back out to go to the different cities in order to get paid for those goods. And the only goods we'd be getting paid for was what would be directly consumed by wherever we happen to place the warehouse. So if we had a warehouse right here, for example, it could feed Manchester and we get paid a little bit for that stuff, but all the other stuff we'd have to wait. So it slows down your revenue stream early. Now, do I think you should use warehouses? Absolutely, you should use them, but use them later in your game when you have enough money that you can afford them. It's the same thing with your big stations and your super stations. Don't go jumping out there and throwing down a $300,000 super station and another $300,000 super station over here and a $300,000 super warehouse, and there you've just spent almost $1 million. Throw in some track, you're well over $1 million spent, and you've got no trains running. That's a great way to go broke really fast. So be frugal at the beginning. Don't use your warehouses. Do use your warehouses wisely later on to do the different strategies that we talk about, like the 2-city pass-through warehouse, the 3-city single warehouse approach, all those different things. But do not use the warehouses early. They will kill you. Now, there's exceptions, like, for example, when I played Mission 4, I did a replay of Mission 4, which is the Civil War, the one where Louisville's a big deal. They give you so much money in that I just jumped straight into warehouses and super stations. Why not? You got, I had so much money I couldn't spend it all hardly. So I just jumped straight in. But that's an exception. When you're playing the harder scenarios with very limited money, stick with bare bones kind of builds like this. Do your rapid expansion or some other kind of way to get quick revenue going, and spend as little money as you can to really get your economy rocking and rolling, and move to warehouses only when you've got the funds to do so. Okay, so this next one I want to talk about was submitted by John Weens. And John noted that if you have a warehouse set up and it's supposed to feed goods into a city, you have to really watch what goes to that city. And here's what we're talking about. We've got a setup here where we've got fish and pigs going into this warehouse, and we'll add some other items on as we go. And we're also letting it pick up the ham and cider. So Manchester's producing cider, which Liverpool needs. Liverpool's producing ham, which Manchester needs. So that part of the city line here would work. A line from Liverpool to the warehouse will work just fine for that. But here's the thing you have to watch out for. Well, here's our train. Watch these trains. This is the first train going to Liverpool. It's taking pigs. Second train is taking pigs. So I think that's all we have is the 2 on there right now. Now the third train, what's it going to take? It's taking more pigs. So the problem we have here is that those pigs are vitally needed in Liverpool. And what it does, and this is somewhat anecdotal. This is my observations. I haven't totally tested this. But what I think happens is when the train is loading at the warehouse, it looks to see, do you need the first thing on your list? Barley. Well, I don't have barley, I can't send it to you. Do you need pigs? Yes, you do. I'm going to bring you pigs. And it just works its way down, and it will fill up the warehouse in Liverpool with pigs before it'll move on to the fish or the apples or whatever else is needed. So this line could literally just sit there and run pigs all the time into Liverpool and never bring them fish, never bring them beer, meat, cider, whatever, apples, whatever else we might put in that warehouse. And Liverpool would growth gets stunted. It's not going to get anything because all it's doing now is basically running pigs into Liverpool. So there's 2 things to learn here. Number one is, this is why I highly recommend that you have a direct line feeding an industry. So if I have an industry that needs pigs in Liverpool, I want this line for my wood fattening from my pig farm to run straight into a station in Liverpool or at least into a warehouse that's directly connected to Liverpool. So I've got a straight connection and I'm getting that stuff into Liverpool. That frees up any trains coming from a warehouse to pick up other goods. That's number one. And number 2 is, even if I do that, I still have to watch. If I've got multiple goods in my warehouse, I still have to watch. And what I may have to do is set up, let's say I want to make sure that this next train going from the warehouse to Liverpool is not going to pick up pigs, but something else. I might have to go in and say, okay, your priority are apples and fish. And there's no apples there now, but let's see what it picks up. Notice it's picking up fish. So you may have to set up your trains with different priorities to make sure that you get all the right goods out of that warehouse moving to your other warehouse. All right, so hopefully that's clear. So think about, first of all, run your key item that's needed by an industry directly into the city, either to a warehouse or a city station that's attached to the city. And number 2, any other goods that come out, you may have to look at your priorities to make sure that you're going to get those particular goods shipped to your city. Because if you don't do that, it's going to go down through its pecking order and it's going to tend to keep bringing barley, or in this case pigs, and eventually work its way down to the fish and may never get down to these other items, and then you're in trouble. All right, so hopefully that was clear. So thank you, John, for that submission. Okay, here's the next thing I wanted to show you that just popped up big time when I did this map. Notice here how we've got this bridge with a pretty good incline going over to the fish. Now this is a clumsy setup. Having that bridge is clumsy anyway, but I wanted to just quickly illustrate because it's here and it's such a striking look. I want you to see what happens when this train right here gets full. Come here. Fills up with fish and then runs, makes its run into the warehouse. So here we go. Here it goes. Notice it's running along at 10 miles an hour, which is pretty close to its peak. But watch what happens when it gets up here to this bridge. running a full load. 1 mile per hour. It's barely moving. Barely. It can barely crawl up that slope. So that little, it's a 9-degree slope, I believe it is just killing that little rocket. So this illustrates a couple of things. Number one, use freight trains with good tractive power to haul freight, period, and especially if you have any inclinations in your track layout, and you will have some. Some of the maps, like I would love to see somebody build a reasonable track layout in the Andes over around Lima and Cusco and that area without having some slope in their tracks. You will have slope. Use freight trains with good tractive power to handle those slopes, and upgrade your trains. Get the trains with more tractive power, more speed. It makes a big difference. All right, so that wraps up this set of user-contributed points. I thought they were some great things. Thanks again to all of you who've contributed. Thanks to all of you for your active participation in the channel. We all make each other better players. And continue to ask your questions. Continue to contribute your thoughts. I'll continue to make this series as long as we continue to get great comments from all the folks in our little band of Railway Empire enthusiasts. So thanks again. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.